Ding dong, the witch is dead. Vanquished in convincing fashion, the magic of Bayer Leverkusen has fallen to a city in Georgia, of all places. Atalanta has beaten Bayer Leverkusen 3-0 in the Europa League final. That much you probably do know. But what this is not a shit on Bayer Leverkusen video. This is an appreciation for how ridiculous what we just witnessed actually was. Because a year and a half ago or so, Bayer Leverkusen in 2022 was in the relegation zone. They hired Xabi Alonso, who we all recognized as a name from famous Spain teams, right? And obviously a guy that played for a lot of the big clubs on the planet. And he turned this team into the best team in the history of Germany. The only team to ever go unbeaten through a Bundesliga season. Not even Bayern Munich could do that. There is some lovely irony in that fact that I'm sure I've mentioned before, that Bayern Munich's one season where they only lost one game, at least one season in recent memory where they only lost one game, that one loss was a very late loss to Bayer Leverkusen, and that's the only reason they didn't have an unbeaten season. And Bayer Leverkusen is, of course, still on for the German double, a German league that produced multiple semifinalists in the Champions League in Dortmund and Bayern Munich. So there's no way that you can make an argument that somehow the German league is not good, and that that's the only reason this has happened, because they proved that they were good by beating a lot of Europe's best clubs en route to that Champions League semifinal. And of course, Dortmund has managed to fumble its way all the way into the final with an insurmountable task of trying to destroy Real Madrid's voodoo magic in that competition. It's an unenviable place to be in, but if they pull it off, it'd be a miracle. And I'll tell you what, if they pull it off, it would also make Bayer Leverkusen look even more impressive. Now, Leverkusen going for that German double, that'll be against Kaiserslautern in the Cup final. Now, Kaiserslautern's a team that nearly got relegated out of the second division of Germany, so I am expecting Bayer Leverkusen to unleash the full fury of their anger from losing this match 3-0 against Atalanta. They are going to roast Kaiserslautern like one of those pigs in movies being roasted by a tribe, like the one that took Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean. Except in that instance, I think they were actually trying to roast Jack Sparrow. I don't know. I haven't seen the movies in a while. I did watch the trial, though. Exhilarating stuff. Not enough Jack Sparrow, though. But it's almost hard to wrap your mind around exactly what has just finished happening. BR Football tweeted something out that gives you a little perspective. 51 games unbeaten. 361 days since they last lost, which was a Bundesliga league match against Bochum. Actually, if you really know ball, then you know that their real last loss was their second friendly this season against Real Sociedad, or their first friendly against Paderborn, which is hilarious because Paderborn's also in Germany and definitely didn't go unbeaten this year, just in case you hadn't noticed. But that was July 29th of 2023. The seasons, obviously, in football are long, and Bayer Leverkusen weathered the entire thing with an unbelievable stretch of W's. W's and W's and W's and a few D's and some pretty nervous D's down towards the end, but a lot of W's. It handled ridiculous fixture congestion towards the end of the year, as ridiculous as it can get in Germany anyways, where they play 4 less league matches. It handled late deficits, like being down 2-0 to Stuttgart, only to come back and score 2 goals, including one that was so late the referee almost forgot to count it. Andrich in the 96th minute. Or Dortmund's late equalizer. Not Dortmund, sorry. Stanisic in the 97th minute for Bayer Leverkusen. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel comfortable calling this one of the most impressive seasons in the history of football. Not only because they were the only unbeaten team in German history, right, and have a chance to do the only unbeaten double in German history, because they've already reached the bar of only. They're just trying to add to the only. But I think it's always important to factor in where you have come from. If you're running the 100-meter dash and you start 10 meters behind the starting line, if you win, it's that much more impressive. If Bayern Munich had been the first unbeaten team to ever go all the way through a German season, it wouldn't have been nearly as impressive. And while it would classify as, one of the most impressive seasons in the history of European football, this one would be higher. Because we're looking at a team that not only had never gone unbeaten through a Bundesliga season like everybody else, but we're looking at a team that had never won the Bundesliga. Not even back in the mists of time. Not even back before anybody cared or there was the internet to banter like different clubs about anything, right? Those sorts of clubs that have trophies from way back when, or, from back before you were paying attention to it. Even clubs like Stuttgart, which I made a video about and had a very impressive season, They've got a Bundesliga winning history. In the 2000s, they have a Bundesliga winning history. And they fell off for a while, and now they're back. But Bayer Leverkusen doesn't have any of that. There is no sort of club infrastructure or expectation in place. If they had managed to win the Bundesliga by a single point, this would have been the best season they've ever had, ever. So what is this? It's a freaking anomaly. It makes no sense. And increasingly, I find in the world of soccer, things that make no sense are happening less and less. Right? Porto's not winning the Champions League anymore. The greatest upset we can get is an underperforming but incredibly talented Borussia Dortmund team scrapping its way to a Champions League final, and those are the real underdogs. Real change like this happens over a really long period of time. It doesn't happen this quickly. Atalanta, the team that beat them in the Europa League final, is a great example of that. Atalanta's never won Serie A, though. They've developed. It was a club that wasn't very big, or at least relatively very big, for a long time, but has consistently built good teams, gotten into Europe, built up its infrastructure, built up its squad, built up its expectations, and now it has a European trophy to show for it. It has a Europa League title and will continue to aspire to being a Champions League club as it has been in the past, again in the future. Right, but it's not a club that's, this iteration of Atalanta, they've not won a Serie A title. Bayer Leverkusen skipped all those steps. They skipped all of them. They just instantly became one of the best teams in Europe. And this one loss does not change that. Because let's be perfectly honest about what just happened here. It was pressure, right? There are levels to pressure. And I find that pressure becomes greater and greater the more that I find, like I've ever been here before, like I've ever left this desk before. So let's be honest I don't find anything. I believe that pressure gets greater and greater the more you're in a position that you're not going to be in it again. Right? You're a World Cup final. The pressure is greater than a Champions League final. The Champions League, it's every year. A World Cup final, it is very, very statistically likely you'll never be there again. That is going to be your one crack, but that's going to be your one crack at that World Cup final. And if you don't win it, then, and obviously the World Cup comes with all its extra pressure, right? Or so is the Champions League final. Right? Just ask any player on PSG who has their house burned down after they lose in the Champions League every year. But this is a position that I think every member of that Bayer Leverkusen team was aware that they were never going to be here again. It is unrealistic it's unfair to expect that you'll ever be here again. If Bayern Munich was never here, they basically owned the Bundesliga. If you looked up the Bundesliga, the logo was Bayern Munich's logo with a picture of Uli Hoeneß just laughing at you. So Bayer Leverkusen is never going to be here again, and that's not a problem. That would be stunning if they were. It would be an even greater sporting story if they were able to get here again and all of a sudden get to the Europa League or probably Champions League final at that point and actually win it. This was just a once-in-a-lifetime ride, and I think it finally caught up to them. Now that the Bundesliga season was over, and they're playing a very good Atalanta team, by the way, that knocked Liverpool out of the competition. It's not like these guys are chumps, right? Liverpool had an unbelievable season, and Atalanta ran through them in Liverpool. I think it caught up to them. They played tight. They didn't take chances. They didn't play with the type of confidence that we've seen from them when they were playing in the Bundesliga, or at least when they were playing against Roma or anybody else, Roma being the semifinal that they had in the Europa League. It finally caught up to them. And is really, this whole thing was an exercise in waiting for it to catch up to Bayer Leverkusen. It was almost like they didn't realize what they were doing. It felt for large portions of this season like they were just going through the motions, and then they just kept winning matches. And as long as Xabi Alonso was able to keep that up, it was great. But also, sometimes you lose. So, like, I could be entirely wrong. Maybe the atmosphere in the locker room was perfect, but sometimes you lose a game. That's why this is so unbelievable. We're talking about world-class athletes getting paid millions and tens of millions of dollars to go beat the other team. The best that the human race has to offer, to go kick a ball past another person. And you are winning every single time. There's not a lot of goals in soccer. There's like a golden rule in sports in general. Obviously, I grew up in a country where there's lots of different kinds of sports, right? But there's a goal. The more point-scoring opportunities there are, the harder it is to upset somebody, right? Because there's more opportunities for them to score. But in soccer and football, there's only a few goals a game, right? So one bounce, one anything could lose it for you. So the most amazing thing about this entire run is the fact that it could happen at all. I couldn't be more happy for Bayer Leverkusen, their fans, their players, their coaches, because as good as you have to be, and clearly Bayer Leverkusen was great, you also have to be lucky. And the luck part is most likely the reason that we may never see something like this again get this close. Obviously, assuming history goes on forever, an unbeaten, treble or quadruple or whatever it ends up being is going to happen in some major league at some point. But given the amount of fixture congestion, the amount of restriction on squad registration rules and everything else, it took us this long to get to this point. And it was a random club like Bayer Leverkusen doing this. And I don't even know how to drive that point home. This is like Aston Villa or West Ham going unbeaten and winning the Premier League. That's what just happened in Germany, right? Because it's not Bayern Munich, it's not Borussia Dortmund, it's not even RB Leipzig. It's not even Eintracht Frankfurt, who just won a European trophy a couple of years ago. Teams that are familiar sights now in the European places, right? Or even Union Berlin, who had a random European place run, right? This is Bayer Leverkusen, right? They were just battling their way back up the table to become relevant. They lost 3-0 to Bochum to end the season last year. Do you guys even realize where Bochum finished this season? No offense to Bochum. They're not very good. They're in the relegation playoff this year. They beat Bayer Leverkusen in the last Bundesliga match of the season last year, 3-0. It's unbelievable. I still don't believe it. You could probably tap me on my shoulder in 25 years from now, be like, can you believe Bayer Leverkusen won or didn't lose for 51 straight matches and went unbeaten in the Bundesliga? And I still wouldn't believe you. But that's the beauty of sports. It's the greatest reality show on the planet. And soccer provides that in aces and spades. It's the reason we all fell in love with it. Things like Bayer Leverkusen. So a toast. I don't really have anything to toast with. So a toast to Bayer Leverkusen. Long may they live in our memory as the weirdest unbeaten champion of all time. So you just didn't see it. I had the beer app on. It was funny.